"You're so stingy with that yoga money, Paige. Spencer is the only one actually building a legacy for this family." That's what my mother said to me, at her own dinner table, in front of my 7-year-old daughter, and she said it while laughing. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I set my fork down, wiped the corner of my mouth with the cloth napkin, and looked at Lily sitting next to me. Her small hand had already found my sleeve. She was twisting the fabric the way she always does when the room gets loud and she doesn't understand why. I kept my voice steady. "That's an interesting way to see it, Mom." Barbara Ellsworth didn't even pause. She waved her hand like she was brushing a fly off the mashed potatoes and turned back to Spencer, who was sitting across from us with that grin. That wide, loose, confident grin he's had since he was 16 and realized he'd never have to earn anything in this family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. My name is Paige Ellsworth. I'm 32 years old, and I own Ellsworth Wellness, a 2-location yoga and holistic health brand based in Boulder, Colorado. I built it from nothing. 1 rented room in a strip mall with a 6-month lease and a folding table for a front desk. 5 years later, I had 2 studios, 11 instructors, a retail line, and a net profit of $215,000 a year. The real estate alone on my Boulder location is valued at $1.2 million. But to my family, I'm just a widow who stretches for a living. My husband David died 4 years ago in a car accident. He was 31. Lily was 3. I was 28 and sitting in a hospital waiting room with mashed peas on my shirt because I'd been feeding our daughter lunch when the call came. They told me David was gone before I even got to the building. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I signed the paperwork, drove home, put Lily in her crib, and sat on the kitchen floor until the sun came up. I wore my wedding band on my left hand for 1 year. Then I moved it to my right. It's still there. A simple gold band. I don't talk about it. I don't need to. After David passed, I threw everything I had into the business. Every dollar from his life insurance went into the second studio location. Every evening I spent awake at 2 a.m., went into building the schedule, the marketing, the books. I kept meticulous financial records. I held a business owner's policy through North American Indemnity that included a $100,000 employee and contractor dishonesty rider. I didn't get that rider because I suspected anyone. I got it because I'm the kind of person who reads every line of every contract and plans for the thing no one thinks will happen. That habit saved me. Spencer Ellsworth is my younger brother. He's 24, 8 years younger than me, and from the day he was born, he was the sun and I was the thing standing in the shade. I paid for Spencer's first semester of college 6 years ago, then his second, then his third. I paid $40,000 in tuition over 2.5 years because our parents told me he had so much potential and they couldn't afford it. I gave him a $15,000 loan to start some kind of e-commerce business that never sold a single product. He never paid back a dime. Total, before any of what happened next, I had given Spencer Ellsworth $55,000 of my own money. $55,000. And every time I handed over a check, my mother smiled and said, "That's what family does." My father said nothing. Richard Ellsworth sat at the head of the table, eyes on his plate, hands folded. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. His silence wasn't kind. It was permission. 9 months ago, my mother called me with a request. She said Spencer needed direction. She said he was interested in business and that giving him some responsibility at the studio would help him grow. She asked if he could help with the bookkeeping, just light work, just looking at the numbers. I should have said no. Instead, I set him up with view-only access to the accounting software. View only. He could see the reports but couldn't move a cent. I explained this to him clearly. I showed him the dashboard, walked him through the monthly statements, and told him his role was observation. Nothing more. What I didn't know was that Spencer had already watched me log in twice. He'd memorized the keystrokes. Within 2 weeks, he used a phishing method to reset the master credentials on the account. He didn't ask. He didn't tell me. He just quietly gave himself full administrative access to the primary operating account of a business I'd built over 5 years, one that supported 11 employees and my daughter's life. And then he started spending. But I didn't know that yet. Not at that Sunday dinner. Let me bring you back to that table. Barbara had made pot roast. The good china was out, which meant she wanted something. She always brought out the good china when she was building up to a performance. The house smelled like rosemary and butter, and there were candles on the table, even though the overhead lights were on. Richard sat at the head, quiet as always, cutting his meat into small, even squares. Spencer sat to his left, Tessa Miller beside him. Tessa was 23, Spencer's girlfriend of about a year. She had a way of smiling at you that made you feel like she was already calculating what you were worth. That night, she was wearing a silk blouse I recognized from a designer I followed on social media. It retailed for about $890. I noticed it because I'd seen the exact one online 2 weeks prior. I didn't think much of it at the time. Lily sat next to me, quiet, coloring on a placemat Barbara had set out. She hadn't said much since we arrived. She never did at these dinners. She'd learned early that Grandma's house was a place where you stayed small and hoped no one noticed you. Spencer was talking. He was always talking. "I've been meeting with some new consulting clients," he said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the room. "Big stuff. Corporate wellness packages. Companies are dying for this kind of thing right now." Barbara beamed. "See? That's initiative. That's what building something looks like." I took a sip of water. "Paige, you could learn something from your brother." Barbara continued. "He's thinking big. You've had that little studio for what, 5 years now? And it's still just yoga classes and candles. It's a $215,000 a year business, Mom." Barbara laughed. Not a polite laugh. The laugh. The one she saves for moments when she wants to remind you that your accomplishments don't register in this house. "Oh, honey, you and your numbers." Spencer is the one actually networking, actually building relationships. You just sit in a room and tell people to breathe. Tessa covered her mouth, stifling a giggle. Spencer grinned wider. Richard cut another square of pot roast. If you've ever had a family member dismiss everything you've built like it was nothing, hit that like button and subscribe. I looked at Lily. She had stopped coloring. Her crayon was hovering above the placemat, frozen. She was watching Barbara. I could see her processing it, trying to understand why Grandma was laughing at her mother. I put my hand over hers. She didn't look up. "Spencer's been telling me about his plans," Tessa said, leaning forward. "He's got real vision. I mean, corporate wellness is a billion-dollar industry. It's not like running a local gym." "It's not a gym," Lily said. The table went quiet. Lily's voice was small but clear. "Mommy's studio isn't a gym. People go there to feel better. She helps them." Barbara blinked. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that has teeth but no warmth. "That's sweet, Lily, but grown-ups are talking about real business." Lily's hand tightened around mine. I felt her fingers curl into a fist beneath my palm. I kept my voice even. "She's not wrong, Mom." "Oh, Paige," Barbara shook her head. "Don't coach the child to fight your battles. It's not a good look." Spencer leaned forward. He had that look, the one where he thinks he's about to deliver the line that wins the room. "It's not like you're using that money for anything real, Paige. You're just a widow playing business owner while I'm actually trying to live." The room didn't move. Tessa looked at her plate. Richard's fork stopped mid-cut. Barbara pressed her lips together, but she didn't correct him. She didn't say a word. A widow playing business owner. I looked at Spencer. I looked at him for a long time. Long enough that his grin started to slip just at the edges. Long enough that Tessa shifted in her seat. Long enough that Richard finally looked up from his plate for the first time all evening. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't push back my chair or throw my napkin or raise my voice. I said, "I understand your perspective, Spencer. I've made the necessary adjustments." Then I looked down at Lily. She was staring at her placemat. A single tear had fallen onto the crayon drawing, a small purple house with a yellow door and 2 stick figures holding hands. The tear had smudged one of the figures. I wiped her cheek with my thumb. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get your coat." We left before dessert. I buckled Lily into her car seat, walked around to the driver's side, and sat there for a moment with my hands on the wheel. The streetlight cut through the windshield. The engine started with a low, steady hum. Lily's voice came from the back seat, cracked right down the middle. "Mommy? Why did Uncle Spencer say that about Daddy?" I looked at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were red. Her lower lip was trembling. "Because he doesn't understand what we have, baby. And that's not your problem to fix." She nodded slowly. Then she turned and looked out the window at the house getting smaller behind us. I drove home in silence. 2 days later, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 11:47 p.m., going through the monthly reconciliation for the studio. Lily was asleep down the hall. The house was dark except for the glow of my laptop screen. I opened the banking app. The operating account balance read $0. I stared at it. I refreshed the page. I closed the app and opened it again. 0. The primary operating account for Ellsworth Wellness, the account that paid my instructors, covered the lease, funded the supply orders, and handled every client transaction across 2 locations, had been emptied. I scrolled down to the transaction list. What I saw made my chest go still. $12,600 to a leasing company. I searched the name. It was a prepaid lease on a 2023 Audi A4, $8,540 to a travel agency in Denver, a 2-week ski trip to Aspen, 2 guests, Spencer Ellsworth and Tessa Miller, $5,210 across 3 designer retail sites. Handbags. Apparel. The kind of influencer brands Tessa posted about on her social media. And then the big one. $61,062, broken into 17 separate transfers over 9 months, each one labeled consulting fees, each one routed to a shell account I'd never seen. $87,412. Total. My brother had stolen $87,412 from my business. I sat there for a long time. The coffee beside me had gone cold hours ago. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of Lily breathing through the baby monitor I still kept on the counter. Then I saw it. The notification I'd missed. Dated 2 days prior, the same day as that Sunday dinner. A payment of $4,200 to Rocky Mountain Pediatric Therapy, flagged as declined. Insufficient funds. Lily's therapy. My daughter has a minor mobility issue from the accident that killed her father. She requires specialized pediatric physical therapy every quarter. It costs $4,200 per session. That payment had been set to auto-draft from the operating account because I'd structured it that way years ago, back when that account always had a comfortable margin. Spencer had drained the account so completely that my daughter's therapy payment bounced. My 7-year-old daughter, who walks with a slight limp because of the crash that took her father, couldn't get the medical care she needed because my brother's girlfriend needed a leased Audi and a ski trip to Aspen. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark for a long time. Something inside me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a clean, quiet break. Like a bone setting itself after years of being out of place. I was done pretending this was okay. The kitchen was dark. The house was still. Lily's breathing came through the monitor in soft, even waves, the only sound in the room. I didn't call Spencer. I didn't call my mother. I didn't draft a furious text at 3 a.m. or rehearse a speech in the bathroom mirror. I didn't do any of the things they would have expected from me, the things that would have given them a chance to rewrite the story before I'd even finished reading it. I opened my laptop again. The screen cast a pale blue rectangle across the kitchen table. I navigated to my Documents folder, the one labeled BOP, North American Indemnity. I'd scanned and saved every page of my business owner's policy the day I signed it, 4 years ago. I found the section on employee and contractor dishonesty. I read it twice, slowly. The writer covered up to $100,000 in losses from theft, embezzlement, or fraudulent acts committed by anyone with authorized access to company systems. Spencer had been given authorized access. He'd abused it. The language was clear. I opened a new email. The subject line read, Formal Claim. Policy number BOP 774186, Contractor Dishonesty. I typed 3 sentences. I attached the transaction list I'd exported from the banking app, the screenshots of the shell account transfers, and the leasing company receipt for the Audi. I read it once. I sent it at 3:17 a.m. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to Marcus Taylor's number. Marcus was my forensic accountant. I'd hired him 2 years ago when I expanded to the second location, not because anything was wrong, but because I wanted someone whose entire job was to make sure nothing ever could be. He was 45, methodical, and he never asked questions that weren't backed by numbers. I texted him 4 words. I need a full audit. He responded at 6:02 a.m. I'll be at the studio by 9. At 8:47 a.m., I called Stephen Wright, my attorney. I told him what I'd found. I told him the total. I told him about the shell account, the 17 transfers, the phished credentials. He was quiet for about 10 seconds. You have the dishonesty rider, he said. I do. And you have the transaction records. Exported and time-stamped. Everyone. Another pause. Paige, once you file this claim and the insurer pays out, they assume the right of subrogation. That means North American Indemnity's legal team pursues recovery directly from Spencer. Not you. Them. They'll file a civil lien. It will attach to his credit, his assets, his name. Every background check, every lease application, every loan. He won't be able to rent an apartment without it appearing. I understand. And you're certain you want to proceed this way? Instead of a family conversation? I looked at the baby monitor. Lily was still sleeping. My daughter's therapy payment was declined because the account was empty. There's nothing to discuss. I'll prepare the subrogation authorization. You'll have it by end of day. I signed the papers that evening at my kitchen table after Lily went to bed. I used the same pen I'd used to sign David's life insurance paperwork 4 years ago. I didn't think about that until after. I set the pen down and sat there for a moment. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator and the streetlight cutting through the blinds. I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, nothing. Just clarity, sharp and clean, like the first breath of cold air after being inside too long. Marcus completed the forensic audit in 9 days. His report was 42 pages. It documented every one of the 17 transfers to the shell account, totaling $61,062. It included the $12,600 Audi lease, the $8,540 Aspen trip, and the $5,210 in designer purchases. It cross-referenced each transaction with Spencer's personal bank deposits and Tessa's social media posts, which she had helpfully time-stamped herself. The ski trip photos went up the same week as the $8,540 transfer. The handbag unboxing video was posted 3 days after the $5,210 charge. She'd even tagged the resort in Aspen. Marcus handed me the report in a manila folder. He didn't editorialize. He just said, "The documentation is airtight. The insurer won't have questions." He was right. North American Indemnity processed the claim in 19 days. They deposited $87,412 into a new operating account I'd opened at a different bank. One Spencer didn't know existed, one he'd never touched. The funds were restored. Lily's therapy was rescheduled. The check cleared. And then the insurance company did what insurance companies do. They went after their money. 6 weeks after I signed those papers, Spencer's leased Audi was repossessed from the parking lot of his apartment complex. The leasing company received a legal notice from North American Indemnity's Recovery Division, and the vehicle was flagged as obtained through fraudulent funds. Spencer came outside to find an empty parking space and a certified letter taped to his mailbox. 3 days after that, Spencer and Tessa's apartment lease renewal was denied. The property management company ran a standard credit check, and there it was. An $87,412 civil lien filed by North American Indemnity Group, attached to Spencer James Ellsworth, date of birth, social security number, everything. The lien wasn't a suggestion, it was a wall. I didn't find this out from Spencer. I found it out from Marcus, who monitored the public filings as part of his standard post-audit protocol. He sent me a 1-line email. Lien recorded, recovery proceedings initiated. I closed the email and went to pick up Lily from school. My phone stayed quiet for 11 days. 11 days of silence from the family that had never gone more than 48 hours without asking me for something. I knew what that silence meant. It meant Spencer was panicking privately, trying to fix it before anyone found out. It meant Barbara didn't know yet. It meant the story hadn't reached the dinner table. On day 12, my phone rang at 8:12 a.m. It was Barbara. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 8:14, and 8:19, and 8:23. I turned off the ringer. At 4:47 that afternoon, the front door of my Boulder studio opened and Barbara and Richard Ellsworth walked in. Barbara was wearing her church coat, the camel-colored one she only wears when she wants to look dignified. Richard was a half step behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. The reception area was empty. My afternoon instructor had just finished a class, and the last students were filtering out through the back entrance. Barbara's face was tight. Her eyes were red but dry. She had cried before coming, but she had stopped before walking through my door. She wanted to look controlled. She didn't. Paige, we need to talk about what you've done to your brother. I was standing behind the reception counter, closing out the register. I didn't stop what I was doing. What I've done. Spencer's being sued by an insurance company for $87,000. His car was taken. He can't sign a lease. His credit is destroyed. Do you understand what you've done to him? I finished closing the register. I set the receipt book on the counter. I looked at her. Yes. Barbara waited for more. I didn't give her more. Richard cleared his throat. He didn't speak. This is family, Paige, Barbara said, stepping closer. You don't bring lawyers and corporations into a family matter. You come to us. You talk to us. You don't destroy a 24-year-old boy's life over money. Over money. I repeated it. Not as a question, just to let her hear it. He made a mistake. He's young. He didn't know what he was doing. He transferred $61,062 in 17 separate transactions to a Shell account over 9 months. He prepaid a $12,600 lease on an Audi. He spent $8,540 on a ski trip to Aspen for himself and Tessa. He spent $5,210 on designer handbags and clothing for his girlfriend. And when the account was empty, my daughter's $4,200 therapy payment was declined. I paused. Lily couldn't get her physical therapy because the account Spencer drained had no money left in it. Barbara opened her mouth, then closed it. The therapy she needs because of the accident that killed her father. The room went very still. Richard looked up from the floor for the first time. His face was gray. I reached beneath the counter and pulled out a manila folder. I opened it and turned it so Barbara could see. Inside was Marcus Taylor's itemized report. Every transaction, every date, every dollar. The Audi lease agreement with Spencer's signature. The Aspen Resort booking confirmation with Tessa's name. Screenshots of Tessa's social media posts, time-stamped beside the matching bank withdrawals. Barbara stared at the pages. Her hand moved to the counter to steady herself. He said it was a misunderstanding, she whispered. It was $87,412, Mom. That's not a misunderstanding, that's theft. You could have called us. You could have let us help him pay it back. You could have handled this like family. I handled it like a business owner, because that's what I am. Barbara's chin trembled. Your father and I have already spent $40,000 trying to settle this. From our retirement? Do you know what that means for us? I know exactly what it means. And I know that you chose to spend that money defending Spencer rather than asking him to face what he did. Richard's voice came out low, hoarse, the first words he'd spoken since walking through the door. Paige, please. I looked at him, my father, who had never once said my name in defense of me at that dinner table, who sat silent while Barbara laughed at my business, who cut his pot roast into even squares while Spencer called me a widow playing business owner. He was standing in my studio now, the business he'd never asked a single question about, saying please. I said nothing for a long time. Then I closed the manila folder. The cost of having Spencer in my life was $87,412. I've decided that was an overpayment. We're closed. Barbara's eyes went wide. Paige Eleanor Ellsworth, you cannot cut off your own family. I'm not cutting you off. I'm choosing who has access to my life and my daughter's life. Spencer stole from my business and my child lost her therapy because of it. That's not a family disagreement, Mom. That's a crime. And you're standing in my studio asking me to apologize for reporting it. I stepped out from behind the counter. I walked to the front door and held it open. The afternoon light fell across the hardwood floor. The street outside was quiet. A woman walking a golden retriever passed on the sidewalk without looking in. Barbara didn't move. You'll regret this, she said. When you're alone, when Lily asks why she doesn't have grandparents, you'll regret this. Lily already asked me why Uncle Spencer said what he said about her father. She's 7. She shouldn't have to ask questions like that. Barbara looked at Richard. Richard looked at the floor. They walked out together. Barbara first, then Richard, a half step behind, hands back in his pockets. Neither of them looked at me as they passed. I watched them cross the parking lot. Barbara's church coat caught the wind. Richard opened the passenger door for her the way he always does, out of habit, not tenderness. They pulled out of the lot slowly. I stood in the doorway until the car disappeared around the corner. Then I stepped back inside. The door closed softly behind me, not a slam. Just the quiet click of the lock sliding into place. I walked back to the counter. I picked up my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Barbara Ellsworth and tapped block. Then Richard Ellsworth. Then Spencer Ellsworth. Then Tessa Miller. I removed myself from the family group chat. I deleted the thread without reading the last 47 messages. I changed the studio's gate code. I updated the emergency contact list, removing every Ellsworth except Lily. I did it calmly, deliberately, one entry at a time. The studio was empty. The afternoon light was fading. The room smelled like eucalyptus and cedar from the diffuser near the front window. I set my phone face down on the counter. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharp. It was clear. That night, I picked Lily up from her after-school program, drove home, and made pasta with butter and parmesan, her favorite. We ate at the kitchen table with the windows open. The May air was warm and smelled like cut grass from the neighbor's yard. Lily talked about a book she was reading in class, something about a girl who lived on a mountain with goats. She talked with her hands the way David used to. I listened to every word. After dinner, she brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, and I read to her until her eyes got heavy. She reached up and touched the gold band on my right hand, the way she sometimes does, turning it once around my finger like she's checking that it's still there. "Mommy?" "Yeah, baby." "The house is quiet." "It is." "I like it quiet." I kissed her forehead. She was asleep before I turned off the lamp. I went back to the kitchen. I washed the dishes. I wiped down the counters. I sat at the table with a glass of water and looked out the window at the streetlight cutting through the blinds. My phone was face down on the counter where I'd left it. I didn't pick it up. I didn't check for messages. I didn't wonder what they were saying about me. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't care what the Ellsworth dinner table sounded like without me at it. I went to bed at 10:15 and slept through the night. No 3 a.m. laptop sessions. No scrolling through bank statements in the dark. No knot in my stomach waiting for the next request, the next favor, the next reminder that my money was welcome, but I wasn't. The silence was the first real peace we'd had in years. A week went by faster than I expected. Then 2. Then a month. Information came through Marcus Taylor, not because I asked for it, but because monitoring the recovery proceedings was part of his post-audit protocol. He sent updates in short, factual emails. I read them once, then archived them. The first email came 6 weeks after the lien was recorded. Spencer had retained a public defender for the civil proceedings because he couldn't afford private counsel. The public defender advised him to negotiate a payment plan with North American Indemnity's Recovery Division. Spencer offered $200 a month. The insurance company's legal team rejected it. They wanted $1,500 a month minimum, with wage garnishment if he defaulted. Spencer couldn't make $1,500 a month. He didn't have a job. The second email came 8 weeks later. Barbara and Richard had liquidated $40,000 from their retirement accounts to make a lump payment toward the lien. They presented it to the insurance company's attorneys as a good faith gesture, hoping it would settle the matter. It didn't. The remaining balance of $47,412 was still active, still accruing interest, still attached to Spencer's name on every credit bureau. Marcus noted in that email that the retirement withdrawal triggered an early distribution penalty of $4,000 in taxes. Barbara and Richard had effectively spent $44,000 to reduce a debt they didn't owe for a son who hadn't apologized, and they were still $47,412 short. I archived the email. 3 weeks passed. The next update wasn't from Marcus. It was public record. Spencer's name appeared in a Boulder County small claims filing. Tessa Miller had sued him for $3,200, the cost of breaking their shared apartment lease early. The property management company had refused to renew after the credit check, and Tessa had co-signed. When the lease was denied, Tessa was on the hook for the early termination fee. She sued Spencer for her half. Then she left him. Marcus confirmed through the filing records that Spencer had moved back into Barbara and Richard's house. The same house with the good china and the pot roast and the candles on the table. The same dining room where my mother had laughed at my business, and my brother had called me a widow playing business owner. He was sleeping in his childhood bedroom at 24 years old with an $87,412 civil lien, no car, no girlfriend, no lease, and no credit score above 489. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the same thing I'd felt the night I signed the subrogation papers. Nothing. Just clarity. 4 months after I blocked them, Marcus sent one final professional update. Spencer had taken a night shift at a distribution warehouse on the east side of Boulder. The position paid $16.50 an hour. North American Indemnity had successfully petitioned for wage garnishment. 22% of every paycheck would go directly to the recovery division until the remaining $47,412 was repaid in full. At his current wage, that would take just over 7 years. 7 years. The same amount of time I'd spent building a business he called Just Stretching. Barbara and Richard had stopped hosting Sunday dinners. Marcus didn't tell me that. Paige's former studio receptionist, a woman named Karen Davis, mentioned it offhand one afternoon while we were reviewing the new scheduling software. She'd run into Richard at the hardware store. She said he looked 10 years older. She said he was buying light bulbs and didn't make eye contact. She said the parking lot had a 10-year-old Buick where the sedan used to be. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I changed the subject to the Thursday evening class schedule. The thing about silence is that it tells you everything you need to know about who people were before you stopped listening. My phone didn't ring anymore. No voicemails, no guilt trips, no texts asking for checks or favors, or forgiveness dressed up as family obligation. No Barbara calling to remind me that Spencer had potential. No Richard clearing his throat in the background, saying nothing, meaning nothing. The absence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of hours I used to spend managing their expectations. Full of energy I used to pour into being small enough to keep the peace. Full of money that used to leave my account in one direction and never come back. I filled those hours with other things. I hired a new operations manager for the second studio location, a woman named Beth Anderson who had 15 years of experience in small business administration. I raised instructor pay by 8% across both locations. I funded a new retail display at the Boulder studio and signed a wholesale agreement for a line of locally made essential oils. Revenue for the quarter was up 11%. Lily started second grade in the fall. She made honor roll in October. She joined a junior swim team at the community center and came home every Tuesday and Thursday smelling like chlorine and talking about backstroke technique with the kind of seriousness that made me laugh in a way I hadn't in a long time. Her physical therapy sessions continued every quarter without interruption. The $4,200 payment cleared automatically from the new operating account I'd opened, the one no Ellsworth had ever seen, the one no Ellsworth would ever touch. Her therapist, Dr. Helen Thomas at Rocky Mountain Pediatric, told me Lily's mobility had improved 14% over the last 2 assessments. Lily could run now without compensating. She didn't favor her left side on the stairs anymore. I watched her one Saturday morning in the backyard, running through the sprinkler with 2 girls from her swim team. She was laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Water flying off her hair, bare feet slapping the wet grass. No limp, no hesitation. I stood on the back porch with a cup of coffee that was still warm and watched her until my chest ached from something that wasn't grief. That evening, after the girls went home and Lily was drying off on the couch wrapped in a towel, she looked up at me. "Mom? Yeah? No one made me sad today. It's just us, and we're happy." I sat down next to her. She leaned into my side. I put my arm around her. The towel was damp against my shirt, and I didn't care. "Yeah, baby, we're happy." The house was quiet. The sprinkler was still running in the yard. The evening light came through the windows low and gold, the way it does in Boulder in late September when the days start getting shorter, but the warmth holds on. I looked at the gold band on my right hand. I turned it once, the way Lily does. Some doors close so better ones can open. I never regretted a single second of it. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's protection. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Loyalty earns its place. And a family isn't a title you inherit. It's a relationship you maintain with respect. The next morning, Lily woke up smiling. If you enjoyed this story about protecting your children and knowing your worth, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.